All right, let's get into it. I can't wait for the whole intro to play. Well, we didn't get a video up yesterday because I was having some Clipchamp issues. I had this massive video. Apparently, it was too massive for Clipchamp to handle, and it kept crashing. I had to rebuild the files, right up into the evening. So hopefully we'll get 2 parts out today instead of one massive video. Outstanding. Well, let's first look into what is happening over in the what in the goo, as they used to call it back when I was serving, which is the war against terrorism in the Gulf of Oman. They actually had t-shirts made up at the time, which of course nobody liked because it said twat in the goo. All right, so what are they doing out there? Well, it looks like they're deploying some new weaponry. Oh, sorry about this. It's got an update in OBS, and everything looks different. By the U.S. Right. Laser wars are finally here. All these things that we read about in science fiction books when we were growing up are all coming true. From lasers, next will be masers, then will be phasers. It's only a matter of time. All right, well, let's get into the actual stories. So what's going on? Well, Lori Idlout looks like there's a reason why she joined the Liberals, because she's just another corrupt liberal, looks like. All right, let's listen to this short video here.
Significant director of a company that's received millions of over $1 million, my understanding, of Canadian taxpayer dollars. And when you talk about integrity and talk about accountability, the fact that nobody seems to have raised this, and now she's joining the Liberal caucus, I wonder if we're going to see some of that in the coming days when we talk about integrity and accountability for members of Parliament for floor costs.
Well, you can bet if there is a reporter working on that right now, they're
going to what is she talking about? Sorry, what is he talking? What are they talking about? Well, looks like Lori Idlout's floor-crossing treachery expose your tax dollars funneled to her family, writes Gen Xer. This is infuriating. Since my last post on this disgusting betrayal, the dirt keeps piling up, he writes. Laurie Idlout, Nunavut's former NDP MP, ditched her party to join Mark Carney's Liberals, becoming the fourth floor crosser to boost their power grab. She's pushing them just 2 seats from a majority, all without an election. That's, well, how's that democracy, he asks. Look at this timeline of coincidences. Weekdates, like to call them. Carney's Liberals dumping billions into Nunavut right before her switch. We covered this the other day. $8.5 million for linguistic education in Nunavut. $250 million to build 750 homes in Nunavut. That's over $333,000 per house. $600,000 for digital literacy. We'll look at that little post after. $228 million for various projects. Vague much, no details, just your money vanishing. So, people should be saying, open the bloody books. Open the books, open the books, open the books, open the books. You're going to be walking around with placards saying, open the books. You don't even have to say who your parties you're on. Right? Open the books just to expose the liberal corruption. 6 billion, yes, billion, in trade and infrastructure. $6 billion. Wow. It's a lot of money concentrated in a very small group of people up north. Adelaide crosses the floor, and then citing northern priorities like housing funds and $50 million for an Inuit university. Convenient. Well, that's a whopping $478 million just in housing projects alone, plus billions more. And on March 12th, Carney announces a massive $35 billion Arctic defense and infrastructure plan, including $253 million plus for Nunavut energy, housing, and infrastructure. Mind you, all that stuff they should have had over a decade ago, if not 2 decades ago. I've been up there. It's pretty horrible. It's a pretty depressing area. There's nothing there except rocks because it's too cold most of the time to grow anything. It's just rocks. And if you're lucky to get there in the summer, you might be there in time when the char run. But that's about it. Who's benefiting? Enter Alan Mullen, Laurie's husband, grinning in that airport selfie from December 18. Oh, yeah. Where is he? Oh, he's down here. Oh, there he is, right there. This fella right here. Yeah, why is he grinning? Why is he grinning indeed? Well, Laurie's husband, grinning in that airport selfie, he owns Nunavut Holdings, Inc., NHI, an Iqaluit-based construction firm specializing in appliances, fire, rescue gear, hardware, industrial supplies, perfect for all these taxpayer-funded bills. Well, I guess somebody has to own that company there. Reports claim NHI snagged up to $500 million or for 750 homes on January 30th. Winkety before she crossed the floor? Or straight up cronyism. This stinks of corruption. Your hard-earned taxes lining their pockets. And don't get me started on her son. Yes, we covered that story about Robin Idlout, charged in 2024 in Winnipeg with accessing and possessing child pornography. After 5 investigations spanning 5 years, the Iqaluit RCMP issued a statement December 30, 2024. Now, post-crossing rumors swirl that this case mysteriously disappeared. Speculation of a Liberal pardon ordeal? Disgusting if true. First, again, we discussed this when we first found out, and we said, well, let's see what happens, right? Let's see if they actually go through with the trial. Let's see if he's processed just like any other criminal, which he won't, right? Because he's already more equal than others just because of his cultural background. This isn't politics, it's betrayal of Nunavut voters who elected her as NDP. In 2021 and 2025, no by-election, just backroom deals. Carney's courtship lasted months. Bribing MPs to switch a majority? Enough. Canadians are sick of this liberal sleaze. Corruption rampant everywhere. Well, Reclamaire here posts $2 million to teach Indigenous women to use the internet. So the government has set up this site, Northern Horizons Digital Entrepreneurship. So when you go to it, it lists where they're going to be sending the money. And they're like supporting more Indigenous and Northern women in joining the digital economy. Requires lowering barriers that increase the cost of training. Like, okay, so does that mean that people who are not Indigenous and not women are not getting this training? That's right. It's more racist funding, right? Because that's all these liberals do is they fund select groups. Some people are more equal than others. It's always about giving money to the oppressed and the victims, right? So that the liberals can present themselves as their savior. So what's the policy? Well, if you look it up online, this is the site. Quag is now Ampere, it writes. And then if you go through, you see they have some training, and in some places, apparently, they do teach some coding. I'd be surprised to see if they have any. Oh, look, they got stories and impacts. Let's look at the stories. Because the last update I saw on the main page was from 2024. What do we got here? We got, there's a recent story. Diving into the core through makes programs like participant Luke Willer. This was up north in Iqaluit. Well, they have some testimonies there. I guess that's good for them. But again, racist funding, because not everybody can have access to it. Enough of the racism. Enough of the cronyism. But I guess it pays off, doesn't it? Look at this latest poll, showing that if there was an election held, the Liberals would have 270 seats, to which all we have to ask is Canada gay and retarded? Like this little meme here from Joe Rogan, because seriously, why would so many people, after the ongoing rolling disaster of the Liberals, are they completely brainwashed? Do they not shop for their own food? Do they not look at the stats? Do they not see what's unfolding on our streets in the big cities? They're complete zombie wastelands full of drugged out people. Over 250,000 Canadians have died because of these liberal policies over the past decade. And everybody's like, oh, they're so wonderful. More abuse, please, sir. More abuse. Of course, as you've heard, there is a podcast coming up with Pierre Poilievre and Joe Rogan. And I'm sure this is leading to a bucket of liberal tears, seems like, because this liberal pundit here, and she is fully liberal, Ranganson writes, wow, CTV puts quite possibly one of the most worst people they could find to talk about Pierre going on the Joe Rogan podcast. Listen to how Sharon describes Rogan. All lies. I don't think she's ever watched him once. What a horrible person she is, he writes. Well, we do know that there are some things that liberals continually say when they have nothing to stand on for their own party. So they will usually accuse people of disinformation, and they will accuse anyone else of presenting a view opposite of them as not being real journalists. But she's not a real journalist either, because she's one of those QCJO media personalities whose employer is funded 27 to 30 grand a year just to employ her, so that she can push liberal propaganda. And anyways, we'll get into some more about her. So let's just watch her make a fool of herself.
Listen, if the goal here was to get him in front of the most number of people to hear his message, Joe Rogan has 15.5 million followers on X. It's the most listened to podcast. But all of that being said, it is the same people that he is already that are his base. He's not expanding his circle of who he's coming to. And just to be clear, Joe Rogan isn't someone who has editorial standards. He's not a journalist. He's a podcaster and has constantly in the past been criticized for a lot of the misinformation he spreads. So if there was someone who can pull out a bit of controversy, I would say there's going to be a lot of ears and eyes on this podcast, because like Louis said, it's high risk. One small thing off, we know people like Donald Trump listen to this. The only thing that is his advantage is that he is not in government. He is the opposition leader. The president has previously kind of negatively spoken about Mr. Poilievre. So there is risk to his personal brand here. But if you were asking me, did he get in front of a whole new set of crowds? No, I already think he's pandering to the same listener group of the Joe Rogan style. Well, we'll
Imagine if they spent as much time scrutinizing the Liberal Party as they did spending time trying to say stuff about the opposition leader. That just tells us they're right over the target when it comes to the Liberals. The way they're just going after the liberal of the the liberal, the liberal of the opposition. Was that a Freudian slip? Probably. So, let's see here. What's this? What's this all about? Okay, well, Stacy writes here. Sharon Carr, the person we just saw there, whining about Pierre Poilievre going on Joe Rogan, works for Navigator, who was paid $1.6 million to run a defense for Hockey Canada's sex assault scandal. They were also paid by taxpayers to advise Trudeau's longtime family friend David Johnston, special rapporteur on the foreign interference investigation. They also advised Han Dong, Sharon Carr, right? A key subject of the foreign interference investigation. Anyway, she writes here, I hope Mario has deep pockets and solid evidence. Now, what is she referring to? Well, she's referring to, let's click on this here. Bring this up. There we go. So, Sharon Carr wrote back on February 18th, this is the death of the Conservative Party. What's left is a hollowed-out cult of thugs and conspiracy theorists led by Pierre Poilievre from the top down. It's a factory of hate and misinformation. Mario is the bottom-dwelling parasite doing the dirty work, absolute bottom of the barrel rot. So Mario, of course, responded to her saying, Sharon, engaging in libel is a new low, even for you. Fact check. I do not work for the Conservative Party of Canada. In the latest polling, Pierre is within margin of error from Carney. So are you calling nearly 40% of the population thugs and conspiracy theorists? Correct me on what misinformation has been provided in my original post. Now, she was just there in a previous video saying, misinformation. Like it's like watching the female version of Justin Trudeau. There's misinformation. Next year, he's going to be talking about misogyny. In November, you accused the Conservative Party of finding dirt on MPs looking to cross the floor and stop them from doing so. So let me ask you, what is that dirt, Sharon? Please do tell us. And I'm sure this libelous post has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you're proud to call me a friend. Your words, not mine. And 5, she goes, I wonder how will you explain to the judge how you were able to come to the conclusion of publicly calling a private citizen on your very public platform, who is not a politician, a bottom-dwelling parasite and absolute bottom-of-the-barrel rot? You should ask your lawyer what the standard of defense is to prove such a statement. Tagging anyone from the Conservative Party won't do anything for you, Sharon. You seem to think they control me or something, or that I'm a member of Parliament. You're going to want to rethink your strategy. Very unbecoming of you, especially considering your position on CTV. If you want to continue this defamation dance, Sharon, just say the word. And Sharon writes, oh, bring it on, girlfriend. I would take great joy in going to court. Actually, I insist. I don't know if this ever happened, but this is the kind of people that the left cultivate and bring over to their side. Liars and scoundrels. Now, Sam Cooper, if you don't know who he is, he's a very smart man. He's a very well-educated journalist, and he has been, he's been exposing the drug cartels that have been operating in Canada. And, of course, he has been taking a lot of training on his own side to try to protect himself in case anybody comes after him, because we know in Canada, the criminals run everything, and the biggest cartel is the one actually running the country, the one called the Liberal government, because they have allowed these drug cartels to operate in Canada willy-nilly, no problem. They must be getting some grift on the side or have allowed them to set up shop and continue to operate, to the point where the United States has to call it out and say, do something about the drugs pouring over our international border into our country, because they're cooking it in Canada. But, Canadians say, oh, that's a lie. It's a conservative lie. That's misinformation, disinformation. Well, he has his facts. He has his Substack. If you want to read it, you can do a 7-day trial. He's not the only person on Substack. Of course, they would never print his stuff in the QCJO media, because that would go against the liberal propaganda that the liberals are all flowers and donkeys. I mean, unicorns. Candace Malcolm writes, "We believe in telling the truth. We will not correct our story." What is she talking about? Well, looks like someone did a screen capture here. Okay, Scarlett Jelena, I'm not sure what to call you because you use multiple names online. Thanks for the email. It is our editorial policy to tell the truth. We refuse to be bullied into submission based on woke ideological pressures. Men are not women. Men cannot become women. The CBC and some government agencies may happily go along with the delusion, but Juno News will not. We will continue to accurately report to our audience the difference between men and women. To be perfectly honest, you seem like a nice person and someone who has had a difficult life. We're not trying to be mean to you. We are simply being honest with you. We wish you well. Best wishes, Candace, Editor-in-Chief, Juno News. Well, it looks like they're standing their ground. More people need to do it. And it's time to stand up to the bullies. In this case, the bullies have created law behind them to go after people who talk like this. So I won't be surprised if we hear more of this. Now, of course, we can't talk about, misgendering without actually showing what the hell is going on in real life. When you lose touch with reality and you believe that women's spaces don't belong to women anymore, you will end up with idiocy like this picture. So, Ivano DeFazio writes, "Whoa, CSIS Canada just got a community notice for misinformation." Indeed. So, why does it look like our intelligence community has been taken over by Islamists? Why would you post something about Islamophobia? Oh, I know why. Because it's government policy. That's because you saw all the ministers were all posting crap online about Islamophobia Day, but we need Muslims to be treated more fairly in Western society. And if you looked at any one of these comments in any of these posts, it would be like, what about non-Muslims being treated fairly in Muslim lands? Because that's not happening. So, but of course, the fact that Islamophobia is a Muslim Brotherhood construct to silence people talking about Islam. So, but they are puppets of whoever's running the government. And of course, we know that other agencies around the planet have stopped sharing information with CSIS because they know they are compromised because of who they are working for, which is the criminal cartel known as the Liberal government. Now, Unfiltered with Kids writes here, Toronto police officers came to this woman's house to speak to her about a post she made online about our Prime Minister Carney. Now, you probably have seen or heard this. We'll just watch this slow video here and her interpretation, and then we will look into... There we go.
What I specifically said, you have a screenshot. Because he's a Zionist scumbag, and he's not my Zionist. So, but really, you're going to come to my door, and you're worried that I'm going to.
People are not fooled. They're not fooled at all as to what is happening in our country. They can see with their own eyes. Here's Tom Quicken Back in the days, back in the old days, I used to work for the RCMP as an intelligence contractor. Part of my work involved threats to the Prime Minister and federal judges. We got frequent referrals from PMO demanding actions on threats to the Prime Minister. Most of them were nonsense and we simply filed them. Some threats were followed up if there was an indication of an actual threat. For instance, simply saying the Prime Minister is a scumbag is not a threat. There is no indication of a threat. Saying the Prime Minister is a scumbag and I wish someone would shoot him is not a threat, and there is no indication of a threat. However, saying the Prime Minister is a scumbag and I wish someone would shoot his kids and attend the XYZ school is indicative of a potential threat. The difference and the real trick here is to assess when someone is simply angry, which is normal and permissible, and when someone is contemplating collecting information and acting out on their anger, which might possibly indicate a threat. The big failure in this video is that the police could not, demonstrate if the woman had made an actual threat simply beyond stating the fact that she thinks he is a scumbag. Well, I believe she said sign a scumbag. There is something known as a threat curve. With the complaints about the Prime Minister is as simply that he is a scumbag / liar or whatever, the threat curve remains flat. If there are signs that the complaints are collecting intel / info on the Prime Minister's family and contemplating action, then the flat line starts to curve upwards. When that curve reflects a sharp upwards trend, it's time for action. Based on actual case involving a senior Fed official. So, yes, there are cops out there who know how to do their job, but as we can see what happened in the UK, it gets to a point where they're just fascist robots doing what they're told. When you have 6 cops showing up at an airport to arrest somebody for a meme, when they get off the plane, because they insulted their prime minister in the UK, called somebody fat, or who the hell knows what. The fat thing is a German thing. Apparently they're arresting people there for calling German politicians fat. Yeah, they're going off their rocker in Europe, and UK is no better. And in Canada wants to join all this insanity by putting people in jail for saying hurty words. Dr. Leslie Lewis writes, China has had an electric vehicle manufacturing presence in Canada since 2019, and when BYD, a Chinese EV manufacturer, opened 45,000 square foot electric bus assembly plant in Newmarket, Ontario, supplying buses, including for the Toronto Transit Commission. McCarthy's recent announcement to bring more Chinese-made EVs into Canada is not a new direction. It's an expansion of an approach that has already existed under the Trudeau government. Here's the problem that Canadians face. A Canadian company could not go to China and open up a factory the way BYD did here. Yeah, well, Canadians can't go to China to open up anything. China protects its critical industries, including electric vehicles and automotive manufacturing, batteries and critical minerals, energy and utilities, telecommunications and data, and transportation and logistics. And nobody does any business in China unless you're in cahoots with the Chinese communists, because they run everything. They're the top gang. So that means if you made a deal with the gang, then you allowed that gang to bring in their gang stuff into Canada. That's how this deal worked. Canada has no equivalent safeguards. Foreign companies can enter and operate in strategic sectors here under far more permissive rules. Canada needs clear rules to protect national interest sectors and our long-term sovereignty. But we're not going to get it. No, all we're going to get is this. Now, Poland has announced they are banning Chinese EV spy vehicles onto its military bases. Look what happens when they ask this question of our defense minister. He's completely clueless. Looks like he got caught with his pants down. Yeah, so you're going to go to each base and raise that with your operational folks. No, that's not how it works. You should be going to your CDS and asking for some guidance because you didn't think it through, you clown. Oh, you did. You know why? Because you don't have any morals and ethics. Because in the end, you're only concerned about one thing, and that's lining your pockets and the pockets of your friends at the expense of Canadians. Canadians be damned, especially the Canadian Armed Forces, which I've repeatedly explained how the Liberals just do not have any respect for. Well, in fact, they don't have any respect for anybody in Canada, unless, of course, you're a Liberal with lots of money. Now, here's a picture of what Canada is going to be in store for once they get those Chinese EVs here. All these rolling little bombs ready to explode and turn into fire and continue to increase your insurance rates. Yeah. I sure hope they have manual latches on their doors. Because when that vehicle catches fire, if it's just an electric lock system, you're trapped in there and kind of burned to death. Yeah. And of course, EV sales have just tanked in Canada because people don't want them. They know they don't have the range in Canada. And the number one thing is, if you don't do a lot of driving and you think EVs are going to save you some money, just remember that every day it's sitting there in your driveway and you're not driving it, it loses its charge. After about a month, your charge is gone. It's like filling up your tank every month, even though you don't drive. Every month. Keep filling it up. And what happens? What happens when your battery drains? And you recharge it again. You've just gone through a life cycle. Yeah. So now work that out. How many life cycles do you have? And how long is your battery going to last? Now, what's the charge of replacing that battery? Pretty well the cost of an entire new car. And how long is it going to last? Not as long as an internal combustion engine, that's for sure. Table Salt writes, Canada's EV industry. Honda pulls out despite $5 billion subsidy. That's right. Nothing but liberal failure as they throw our money away after Rampant corruption scandal after another. $15 billion electric vehicle project toast. Another one, Stellantis sells its stake in Windsor battery plant for just $100 and a massive EV write-down because they know it's a dead industry. But why are the Liberals pushing it? Because of Mark Carney's net zero agenda, because he's heavily invested in net zero. That's why he's taking control of Canada, because this is the only way he can make money. Because nobody else on the planet wants to buy into this green scam bullshit anymore because they've realized that when it comes to energy, it's too expensive. It's too expensive for a scam. This low carbon fuel that they're creating. Oh, wait, market for this. And everybody, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, Japan said no thanks. Made a big $56 billion deal with the United States. Europe says no thanks. We'll just take any kind of fuel we can get right now. And especially with the cost of oil right now going up, with the twat and the goo, well, it's only going to get worse. Canadians should be outraged, writes the official record. Billions spent, targets missed. What did Carney's climate taxes actually deliver? Well, after years of carbon taxes, EV subsidies, emission caps, industrial regulations, a new report says Canada is not on track to hit any of its major climate records. That's because it's all a scam. By 2030, emissions are projected to fall only 18 to 22% below the 2005 levels, about halfway to the 40 to 45% Paris goals that cannot be achieved unless you impoverish your population. It's the only way it's going to work. If you impoverish your population and make them live in tar paper shacks and igloos, then maybe you might bring it down. But even then, they're going to be burning everything they can get their hands on to stay warm in the winter. Billions spent, targets missed, but it's not the only one. Doug Ford is right to worry about Canada's China EV deal. Supporters of Canada's new China trade deal argue cheaper electric vehicles will be good for consumers. Doug Ford isn't buying it. And the math explains why. China's EV industry isn't competing on a free market. It's competing with the full force of the Chinese state behind it. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Chinese government subsidies total roughly $230.9 billion between 2009 and 2023. That level of support doesn't exist anywhere in North America. Then there's the labor. Chinese assembly line wages start around $4.20 an hour. In Canada and the US, the auto manufacturing wages average closer to $29 an hour. You can't beat that. You can't compete with that. You can't compete with $4 an hour when you're giving your own folks $30 an hour. And that really is the reason why Trump imposed all his tariffs to try to bring the industries back home. It means a big reset, a big economic reset. Of course, he's trying to reset a lot of things at the same time. That needed to be done. Bringing his industries back home, because over the years, over the decades, what do? They farmed out all their industries that make stuff to other countries where they pay their people next to nothing to bring it back to North America to sell to those people so they could buy it. But you've taken their jobs away, so they don't have any money to buy anything anymore. So it's going to come back to, when they start making stuff again in North America, they're going to have to go back to the edge of making stuff that lasts. Really, this whole concept in industry of just making things that have a certain amount of life so that they can replace it so you can keep making money. Again, that is another moral and ethical issue in our democracies, but we have bigger problems to deal with, like non-stop liberal corruption. Canada has no choice but to repeal 100% tariffs on Chinese battery electric cars, says Premier Scott Moe. Moe acknowledged Saskatchewan is winner in trade talks with Beijing, but denies it came at expense of others. Yeah, okay, Moe. So Moe is like, yes, we need to make deals with mass murdering communists because it's good for canola. Sorry, Moe. I know. The farmers need to sell their stuff to somebody. But even then, did we get confirmation from China? We still haven't heard confirmation whether or not they're actually going to buy that canola, right? They said they would buy it once we took these EVs in, and this deal is only for a year. So what's going to happen after that year? We're going to be stuck with these EVs. They're going to want to bring in more EVs. I don't think this is going to go as good as you think. No. Mario Zelaya writes, breaking 25% of Canadians are experiencing food poverty. The Liberal success, eh? Yet we give Nexstar Energy $14.5 billion in EV batteries, $13 billion to PowerCo Company in EV batteries. We're just pissing money away. Just blowing it out the door. We don't care if you're starving Canadians. We got money to give for net zero, even though all these industries fail. Every single one of them. And why? How are they doing this? How are they getting away with it? Canada's economy is so poor, it represents a human rights crisis, says Canadian Human Rights Commission. Agency says inflation, housing, shortages, and rising poverty rates put the fundamental human right to an adequate standard of living at risk. Really? Warned you this would happen back in 2015 when you elected the Liberals, because they spend like drunken sailors on meth. Non-stop. It's all they ever do. And they have no morals or ethics, which is why they came out with killing you as part of healthcare. Yeah. You need healthcare? We're going to give you a maid. How's that? Yeah. Wait times for medical procedures in Canada, neurosurgery, over a year. Well, just under a year, 349 days. But seriously, if you need neurosurgery and you're waiting close to a year, good luck. Orthopedic surgery. Yeah. Want to get your knees fixed? I'd love to get my knees fixed. Otolaryngology. I have no idea what that is. It's the first time I've read that word. I have to look it up. Plastic surgery. 291 days. Now, plastic surgery, I guess that would include a lot of people getting stuff removed from their skin that's cancerous. Gynecology. Yeah, not good that women's health is taking so long now. But then again, Liberals don't understand women's health because they think men can be women. And then maid, how long does it take to get maid? Oh, 0 days. Look at that. Excellent healthcare right there, right? Sask Girl writes, Canada has achieved the grim medical milestone, the world's first successful heart transplant from a patient euthanized by maid. Canada is full of ghouls. We are a ghoulish nation with no soul, no morals, no future. Unless that future is bankruptcy. Lisa Robinson writes, what is Ford Nation trying to hide? Yes, as You've seen yesterday we had a little bit on there with Rebel News trying to say, like, what are you trying to hide, Doug Ford? What's going on? He came up with all kinds of ideas, but then again, what's even funnier though is people online saying that Doug Ford is acting like Trump. When Doug himself said, well, if Mark Carney can hide his records, I can hide my records too.
When a government wants to erase its own records, you have to ask yourself, what shameful secrets are they trying to bury this time? We already know what happens when secrecy rules. The Greenbelt scandal here in Pickering, billions in potential developer gains, insider knowing in advance, ministers resigning, only came to light because Freedom of Information request exposed it. Or how about at the federal level? The ArriveCan contracts, nearly $60 million spent, awarded to a tiny operation with most subcontractors doing no actual work. Uncovered because someone demanded the records. And then there was the We Charity student grant program. Again, $900 million awarded without competition or proper oversight. Again, only revealed because of FOIs. We would never have known about any of these, the Greenbelt, the ArriveCan, We Charity, or any other scandals that the Canadian government have faced if it weren't for Freedom of Information laws. So without them, the public would still be completely in the dark. As historian Lord Acton famously said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men.
Indeed. Yes, they are. Always. So there might have been some echoing issues. Steve's OBS did an update and buttons are a little different. And one final piece here from Cat Canada. Close out the show with this video here, and we will see you tomorrow. I really appreciate all of you coming out, especially my subscribers and followers. If you're not subscribed and following, it doesn't cost you anything. Please do so. It helps to build the channel as we try to increase the quality of our shows. If we ever make any money off this, we'll finally be able to get some proper equipment. All right, let's listen to this video.
The darker side of the Canadian housing bubble is where the money came from. For the last 15 years, Canada has effectively hung a open for business sign for the world's illicit capital. This is known as the Vancouver model. International crime syndicates, corrupt officials, and tax evaders realized that Canada had a loophole. You could buy real estate through shell companies with almost zero transparency. You didn't have to say who the real owner was. You could show up with bags of cash at a casino, wash it, and buy a luxury penthouse. This phenomenon, known as snow washing, turned Canadian real estate into a global piggy bank for the world's dirty money. Reports estimate that billions of dollars were laundered through British Columbia and Ontario real estate alone. This massive influx of artificial demand disconnected local housing prices from local incomes. A dentist in Vancouver wasn't competing with another dentist for a home. He was competing with a shadowy shell company funded by capital flight from overseas. The government knew this was happening. Intelligence agencies warned them, but the government did nothing. Why? Because the influx of foreign money was propping up the GDP numbers. It made the politicians look like economic geniuses. The real estate transfer taxes filled the government coffers. The construction jobs kept the unemployment numbers low. They became addicted to the drug of foreign capital. And when the prices got too high for locals, the government didn't try to lower prices. They tried to increase the demand even further to keep the Ponzi scheme going. This brings us to the demographic shock. In recent years, the Canadian government has ramped up immigration to levels that are unprecedented in the developed world. We are talking about population growth rates of roughly 3% per year. This is faster than many developing nations in Africa. The government argues this is necessary to fill labor shortages. But the economic reality is that this is a demand-side stimulus for the housing market. When you bring in 1 million people in a year, but you only build 200,000 housing units, the price of shelter has to go up. It is basic supply and demand. This policy has crushed the rental market. Rents in major cities have skyrocketed, forcing young people and immigrants into overcrowding. We are now seeing slumlord listings in Toronto where people are renting out half a bed or a mattress in a kitchen for hundreds of dollars a month. We are seeing the explosion of tent encampments, dubbed Trudeau towns, in every major city park. This is the third worldification of a G7 nation. But the government cannot stop the population flow because if the demand drops, the housing bubble bursts. And if the housing bubble bursts, the banking system goes with it. This is the scary part. The banks. In the US, there are thousands of banks. In Canada, there's an oligopoly known as the Big Five. These banks control almost everything. They are massive. They are protected by the government. And they are exposed to the housing market to a terrifying degree. For years, these banks handed out mortgages like candy. But unlike the US in 2008, where the loans were ninja loans, no income, no job, Canadian borrowers generally had jobs. The problem wasn't the borrower's employment. The problem was the structure of the loan. In Canada, you cannot lock in a 30-year fixed